You have seen a lot of people use bus tracks on their projects and they add maybe reverb in it or a delay in it. They say that you need to put wet plugins into it. But do you even know why they use bus tracks? Do you know what revolves around the routing when it comes to bus tracks? So today in this video, we're going to learn everything about bus tracks, why you need to use it, why it is advantageous over putting plugins in the same channel strip. I'm Florina Jain, otherwise known as Flow of Music. And if you are into music production and especially into Logic Pro, and if you have not subscribed, then click the subscribe button down here. So without any delay, let's get started. Let us understand what bus tracks are and let us understand about the routing. So you have a vocal track and you have an output. From the vocal track, how does the output come? It comes directly like that. So in between, you can have any plugins that you want, maybe EQ, compressor, whatnot, okay? So it goes from the track, from the audio track, directly to the stereo out. It's just a straight line. What bus tracks are? So for example, I am adding a bus track for this particular audio track, okay? So what routing happens now is basically the signal one goes from the audio track directly to the output, and there's another signal going from the track to the bus track and comes back to the output, okay? So basically there are two kinds of signals going on. One goes directly from the track to the output. The other one goes from the track to the bus track and to the output. So this amount of signal that goes to the bus track, that can be altered. So for example, I can just send a portion of the signal to the bus track, maybe 20% of the signal. Only that can be sent, and whatever effects you want to put in this bus track, it goes through that and comes out. Whereas in this straight line, so from the audio track to the output, 100% of the signal goes, okay? You can't make 20% of this go from here to there. If you want to make those alterations, you need to put a bus track and put that amount that you want to go through, okay? So this is the routing of bus tracks. So let me show you in Logic Pro how you can add a bus track and why you need to add bus tracks for certain plugins. So right now I have this track called Audio 1. So I'm going to rename it to Vocals. Let's just record something for the sake of the video. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This track has some information in it, right? And this is the channel strip for this track, vocal track. 100% of this signal directly goes inside that channel strip. You all know in Logic Pro, this is a place where you add plugins, right? So from here, it goes to the channel strip. If you've added any plugins, it goes through that. If not, directly comes to the stereo output and you get the output directly. So now let's add a bus track. So to add a bus track, you have something called sends over here. Okay, so basically the idea is I'm going to send a portion of this track into a bus track. That's why it's called a sends. So I'm going to click here and let's choose an empty bus. So I'm going to choose bus number 1. There's an aux 1 created for this. So I'm going to probably name it as, let's say, reverb. So I'm going to double click and put reverb, okay? Now what has happened is this track has information going through the channel strip, comes to the output. In addition to that, it has a bus track. So I've not sent any amount of signal, okay? To send a certain amount of signal, I'm just gonna increase this dial over here. So I can just increase it like that. So for example, I'm sending so much of the original signal to the bus track. Now what will happen is there's a signal going from the track through the channel strip to the output, plus there is a signal going from the track to the bus track, so much of level. So it goes through the bus track and again goes to the stereo out. Let's see what we hear right now. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. So I'm going to solo the bus track alone. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. Listen to the volume level in this aux track once again. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. Now I'm going to solo the channel strip. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic. You were definitely able to hear a volume difference, right? 100% of the signal goes through the channel strip to the stereo out. So you get 100% of the volume. But in the bus track, you're only sending a portion of it. I've only sent minus 14.8 dB of signal, right? So that is the reason why the volume is less. If I have increased it like really high, now listen to the aux track. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. So that's how I'm able to control the level of signal sent to the bus track. So why does this give you an advantage, especially when you add plugins like reverb and delay? For example, I have multiple vocal tracks. I just want to put all of those vocal tracks in a particular reverb environment. So I'm gonna just take an example and say I want that environment to be like in concert hall. See, I have an option. I can, yes, put a reverb on each and every channel strip of the track, put a concert hall preset to the reverb and do it. But what's happening here is the computer is having a lot of strain on itself. Why do you want to duplicate the same plugin multiple times and put it on different tracks, okay? If you have an option to put the plugin on one place, send all the tracks to, that particular plugin, then that's easier, right? You don't have strain on your computer. The routing is much more easier. And in addition to that, you can control the level of signal sent to the reverb. You don't want the track to only have reverb, right? You need the dry signal, and reverb must be there, but it should not overpower the dry signal, right? If you are able to put the reverb plugin on one location with the preset that you like and send all the vocal tracks, for example, to that, definitely the strain on your computer is drastically reduced, okay? You're not adding like 10 reverb plugins. You're putting only one, but just routing all the 10 tracks to that plugin. So that is a reason why adding bus tracks are really helpful. They help, your computer to work faster instead of giving unwanted strain to it and all of that. So I'm going to add a reverb, chroma verb, and I'm going to choose a concert hall preset. So now I only want so much of my dry signal into the aux channel, okay? I don't want a lot. So now let's see how it sounds like. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. So I'm going to solo the aux track alone. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. I'm able to hear a lot of reverb happening, but that's not overpowering at all, because 100% of the signal I'm able to hear it, because it directly goes from the track directly to the stereo out. This extra routing is giving me a little bit more finer edges, right? This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. There is another option that you can try as well. So you can also send 100% of the signal to the aux channel as well. Stick with me. This might be confusing, but you will get it, okay? So I'm going to send fully. So let's say I'm putting it up to 0 dB itself, okay? So what's happening is the entire signal goes to the reverb. Technically, when you play it, it sounds very odd right now, because 100% of the dry signal also you're having through the aux, 100% wet signal also you're having. This is a video on, okay, too much of reverb. But you can control something else now. That is the fader of the aux channel. This fader is similar to any fader that you have on any channel strip. Basically, when I reduce this fader, this amount of reverb volume will be reduced. If I want 100% of the wet signal, but I don't want so much of volume, I can control it through the fader in the aux channel. So let me reduce it down and let's play and see what's happening. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic. So it is not as, weird as it was sounding just before this, right? Because I have adjusted the amount of volume coming out of this reverb through the volume fader. So I can add as many bus tracks as I want for a channel strip. So imagine I have another vocals, for example. I can just, select the same bus that I want and send the same amount to it as well. So that both the tracks will be having the same kind of reverb. And I didn't add like 2 plugins or anything. It's just one plugin, but I'm routing it through that. So yeah, like I said, I can have more bus tracks. So if I want a delay for this track, I can go down, choose the bus number 2, add a delay. So let's try stereo delay. Now I'm just gonna increase it. Let's see how it is. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks. So this is too much of delay. So let's mix it. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. This is a video on bus tracks in Logic Pro. Okay, so if you want to rename this, you can double click and put delay. You literally have around 256 bus tracks that you can technically apply for a single channel strip, okay? That's the flexibility you have in Logic. This is not limited to reverb or delay. It's up to your imagination right now. So I hope you got some knowledge about bus tracks, and I hope if you had any confusion earlier to this video, I hope everything would have resolved by now. If you have any questions, do drop it in the comments, and I hope this video was useful. Thank you so much for watching. Keep making music and I'll see you guys in another video.